Hello and welcome to MC Tech Talk with Betsy and Kit. With all the technology we use in education, we thought it would be a great idea to share some tech tidbits and hacks that will help make your use of technology more efficient and meaningful.
You can find all of our episodes on our YouTube channel, MC Tech Talk, so make sure to like and subscribe. We'll be sharing our screens during the session as we walk you through the different tools. So if you're listening on the go, you can go back and view the recording to see what's going on.
Without further ado, let's jump into today's topic. Hello, MC Tech Talk friends. This is Kit
And Betsy.
And we're coming at you from the Monroe County ISD. Thank you very much for joining us. It's our very first episode of Monroe County's premier podcast on all things ed tech. My name is Kit Miller. I am an early on home visitor at the ISD. Bonus points in the comments below if you know what an ISD is and what it does. I'm an educator specifically in early childhood special education, but did you know that this is a second career for me? I actually have a history of IT experience. My first real job was working as a Microsoft desktop support analyst and an internet tech professional, which is just a snazzy way to say that I have a little bit more than a basic understanding of networking, network systems, and computer systems. But I'm really pumped to share a bunch of that nerdy stuff with you and hopefully make the lives and jobs of my educator friends a little easier.
And I am Betsy Winter. I'm an instructional technology specialist at the Monroe County ISD. I get to work with teachers and students and show them how to use technology in the classroom. Throughout the year, I also host professional learning opportunities for teachers both in person and virtually. Prior to what I'm doing now, I was a classroom teacher for 10 years. I taught everything from math to English to technology, and I had the opportunity to work with students in grades 5 through 10. I'm excited to be doing this podcast because I love sharing technology with others.
And you're so good at it too.
Thank you.
We got together, Betsy and I, and created this podcast because we wanted to share ed tech tips and tricks. We really just wanted to give you that information to kind of help in your day-to-day work. We really want to help others become more efficient and maybe even discover things about these tools that you're using every day that you may not have already known about.
There's so many people that we talk to that say, I didn't know that it could do that, or you can do what with that app?
Yeah. So we've designed this podcast and we created these episodes to really share relevant ed tech tools. So we really just wanted to offer this information to kind of help make your work a little bit easier.
So our ultimate goal in creating the podcast is to help anyone in education to be able to use technology more effectively and efficiently, no matter what role you're in. Whether you're a teacher or a secretary, a paraprofessional, administrator, support staff, we have something for you. We will be sharing professional learning opportunities that are available to you throughout the season, so make sure you stay tuned for those. And we will give you the opportunity to submit questions on each episode using our Google form. So
and please do. Yeah.
So if we don't answer something that maybe you're not sure about or you have further questions, then make sure you get those to us. We're so glad you've joined us and look forward to sharing our ideas and experiences with you. On today's episode, we're talking about commonly used features and apps that are found in Microsoft 365.
Because who isn't out here using Microsoft products, right?
Right.
So hopefully you walk away from today's episode with a little bit better understanding of Microsoft 365, specifically kind of how to access it, what's in it, things about Teams, Word, Excel. So let's just dive right in.
Okay, so please keep in mind that we will just be doing an overview of Microsoft 365 today. So to hear more about some of these apps that we're going to talk about, you can check some of our later episodes out and we'll go more in depth in how to use these and why you would use some of these apps.
All right. Microsoft 365 is like a hub where all of the applications within Microsoft live. So do you remember, Betsy, back in the day when we used to get those .exe CD files for each of our applications in Microsoft? If we ordered a Microsoft Office Suite for example, we would get a disc that said, here's Excel. And then we'd get a disc that said, here's Word. And those discs were how we launched them, each of those apps. Microsoft 365 is like that without having to have all of those different executable files and disks to launch from.
So in the past, we were actually downloading them to our computers and using them as apps on our computer, which we can still do.
Correct.
But Microsoft 365 has allowed us to access those in a much more efficient way.
Absolutely. And so, like I said, it's a hub, or I think of it like a train station, where Microsoft 365 is the train station, and your ticket to get into that train station is your Microsoft login account. So you'll have like a Microsoft login from your employer, or you'll have a personal Microsoft login that you're using. But that's your ticket to ride any of the trains or apps that are hosted within that Microsoft 365 train station. So, like Betsy said, the idea here is that instead of having to pull it down and put it onto your computer, each one, and access it that way by downloading it, you can access all of those Microsoft products via the web, basically. So you can get to Microsoft 365 by going to www.microsoft365.com or www.office.com. Either of those will launch you into the window that Betsy's got up on her screen right now, which is the sign in for Microsoft 365. So once you get to this space, you can log in, like I said, using your Microsoft account that either you have personally for your use or you're using because your employer has given you a Microsoft account. But basically, once you log in to 365, you are in your own 365 hub of the cloud, right? So you log in, you're in 365, you can view all of these different Microsoft applications and basically just kind of click around and dot your way through it to see what the different apps are. So if we go to, again, office.com or 365.com, we log in using our login account, and then you'll see where I'm sharing Betsy's screen to show you guys where we click on in the upper left-hand corner where we can explore all of our apps. So again, I just basically walked into the train station. My ticket is that login that I just used, and this is my hub here of all of these different applications here that we use all the time.
So for those of you that are familiar with Google or use Google on a daily basis, this is like going to your Google Drive. You're signed into your Google account, you're in your Google Drive, you're able to access all of the Google apps that are available to you. So basically that's what we're doing with 365. We're logged into our account, we're going to the apps, we can see all of our files that we own. Or has been shared with us.
Exactly. Yep. So yeah, that's kind of 365 in a nutshell. Basically, from that hub, then you're going to go ahead and open up any of those other applications that you're going to use within that Microsoft suite. So
the first one we're going to look at is Microsoft Teams. Now, right now we're on the web, and I can go in and access Teams through the web. So if I go over to where all of my apps are, I can click on Teams, and that's going to take me to the web version of my Teams. The other way, and a lot of times if you have a Microsoft device, it'll automatically open Teams depending on your startup settings. Yeah. So if Teams is open on your computer, it's going to look like this. So right now I have a Teams window open. If I minimize this, I am opening Teams on the web. So please note that there are different ways to open up your Microsoft apps. So now that I am in my Teams, on the left-hand side, we have our activity, we have our calendars, we have our teams, and then there are some people who will actually use Teams for assignments and other things for their students. So while I'm in the Teams, so you'll notice on the left-hand side here, I'm on Teams, these are all the teams that I'm a part of. So these are like...
Teams are like a theme, and a theme is a dream, friends. So teams are like filing cabinets almost, that have their own theme. Basically, like each team is going to have its own kind of like either topic or content or things like that, theme, if you will. And
So
then
you may have teams that are math department related, or you might have early
an early
childhood.
childhood versus like a special ed team, something like that. Yep.
So anytime you're collaborating with a group of people, you can create that team. Now we have one here called Practice. Up at the top right-hand corner, you can see where you can join or create a team. Now the only people that can access these teams are people that you add. So I've gone in, I've created a team, I've called it Practice. When I click inside this team, this is where you're going to find conversations that you can start, where you're going to see posts, files, notebooks that have been created.
This first window that we're looking at here within Teams, where it says posts, what Betsy's describing is almost like an IM feature. It's almost like an instant messenger feature within Teams there.
We also have the ability to meet as a team. So we can start meets from here. We can schedule meetings from here. So when people say they're going to meet on Microsoft Teams, that's like a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet meeting that you can have. Teams has that ability as well. Up in the upper left-hand corner, if I go back to all teams, if I use the three dots in the upper right-hand corner of that practice team, it gives me some additional options. So I can manage this team, I can add channels, and this is where I would go ahead and add members of that team.
And if you're adding members to that team, you're adding users to that theme. So whoever you're adding into your theme team is going to have access to the things that are hosted within that team.
So we would go ahead and type their name or their email, and then we would add them to that team.
And now that they are in the filing cabinet with us, they can, Betsy, if you open up Practice again, they can access all the files that we've hosted here within this theme team. So basically, yeah, once you're inside of that team and you're looking where you can either like post things to that IM chat feature, you can coordinate a meeting like Betsy was talking about. But for me personally, I will say that the biggest function of Teams is this sort of like shared storage file space that Betsy's looking at right now. So underneath files, anything that I put out here is going to be accessible, shared by those people who I have invited into this filing cabinet with me.
And you have the ability to add files from here, upload files, change the view depending on what you like, and then to share this out with a link.
Correct. So you could take a document that is hosted here inside of your themes and share it out to people who are outside of that team, like on a document by document basis for sure. And that's Teams.
Yes, in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. So the last piece that we just mentioned there was about sharing and permissions. And basically, that is a beefy topic. That is a beefy topic for another day. But right now, what we're going to get into is Microsoft Explorer. So the reason that I'm kind of using Teams as a segue into Explorer is because Explorer is your folders. It's your file icon. It's that icon on your computer where it looks like a little manila folder with a tab on it. And those are the windows through which you look at all of the different views on your computer. And I mention this in context of just wrapping up our little overview of Teams because Teams can be synced up to your Microsoft Explorer, which can make navigating Teams, those files, a little bit easier. But in the meantime, just kind of understanding that Microsoft Explorer is your folders, it's your file icon, and it's basically a way for you within your own desktop, your own computer, and the machine that's right there in front of you, basically, right? You're going to use your Windows Explorer. If that was your house, then the Explorer is your windows, and you're just going to look through your windows to these different views here. So, for example, like I can use my Microsoft Explorer to open up and look at, here's all the downloads that I have put onto this computer. These are files that I've downloaded. Here are the files that are like shared and stored on my personal desktop, things like that.
So everything in here is housed locally on your computer.
Correct.
In File Explorer.
Correct.
Which can then be uploaded to your OneDrive, which then puts it on the cloud.
Correct.
And the nice thing about 365 is being able to access it from any computer. Anything that lives locally on your computer, you have to have your computer to access it. But when you have stuff in your OneDrive and you have stuff in Microsoft 365, that gives you the ability to use a different computer and still have access to all of your files.
100%. So just kind of to rephrase that, yeah, your Explorer is going to be like your local folders and files. But it also has a window that's kind of like a portal to that cloud storage so that you can kind of like view whatever those shared network drives are, things like that you have synced up, OneDrive, Teams, things like that.
So getting through your Explorer over on the left-hand side, you'll have this quick access, which will let you get to the desktop, like Kit mentioned, and your downloads and your documents.
I'd like to point out too those
folders.
little pins that are on there. Mm-hmm. You do have the ability within your Microsoft Explorer to kind of like not set favorites, but kind of set favorites. Like what are some things that you access frequently? Things like that can be here, like pinned here to your quick access, and then that just helps you get to that stuff just that much more quickly and readily. Anything else about Explorer?
Nope, I think that sums it up.
Well, we've explored our computer using Microsoft Explorer. Let's explore the internet next using Microsoft Edge.
All right, so Microsoft Edge is your web browser, and those of you that use Chrome, it's similar to that. It lets you access everything that's on the World Wide Web. It's fun.
I use Chrome.
I use Chrome too. But Edge does exist. So in Edge, up at the top, we have our search bar. So that's where you can type in web addresses or what you want to search.
Yeah.
And then they also have a searching bar as well. But what you can do is when you're looking for things or you find websites that you want to go back to, you can bookmark those. So for instance, if we were looking up the weather, we could find some different weather websites. We have our national and local weather. And if I want to save this for future use, I can go up to my little star in the address bar. And when I click on it, it's going to allow me to add it to my favorites bar. So I'll go ahead and add it, and I'm going to click done. And you will now see that our national and local weather is in our favorites bar. Now,
so it's basically she just created a shortcut to that website, like here up in the window itself for Microsoft Edge. So now she's just going to go and click on that kind of like shortcut that she's created using that little star icon.
Yep. So once you have all of your bookmarks up here, you can click on any of these. Takes you straight back to that web address that you saved.
And the thing where
easy
you
access.
A bunch at a time.
Yes. Okay. So now the other cool thing is you can actually organize these into folders. So if you're looking for math stuff and science stuff and social studies stuff, and you're wanting to compartmentalize all of that, we do have the ability to create folders. So I'm going to right click on my favorites bar, and I'm going to go to add folder. We'll just give this a fancy little name called example and save it. And what you can do with these is you can click and drag to get these links into that folder that you just created. So when I click on my folder, I now can see everything that is in there. So we all have those websites that we get to work. We need to open up certain websites. We use them every day and we need to access them quickly. So now you can take those bookmarks, put them in a folder. We're going to right click on that folder and we're going to click on open all three at one time. So for instance, I have my email, my calendar, and I have some other documents that I like to have open. So when I create bookmarks and put those in folders, I get to work and I can open those all up at one time. So I don't have to go into each individual bookmark to open them. And then just to wrap up Microsoft Edge, up in the right-hand corner, we have these three little dots. And when I click on those, we have some settings that you can customize and change to your liking when you're using Microsoft Edge. So we can go into our history, we can go into our downloads. There's apps and extensions that you can get for Microsoft Edge. You can print from here, and then you can go into the actual settings menu to look at those settings as well. So as Kit mentioned, you can go in and kind of play around with these settings, kind of customize it to what works for you. And then if you are a Google Chrome user or you've used other browsers in the past and you want to go to Microsoft Edge, you have the ability to import your favorites. So when I click on import favorites, it's going to bring a menu up and it's going to ask me where I want to import it from. So I can import it from Explorer, from Chrome, from Firefox, from any of these. And when I click import, it's going to pull all that data from that web browser into Microsoft Edge for me. So I don't have to reset everything up, which makes it super convenient. And you can pin these tabs. So a lot of times I always have my email up, I always have my calendar up, and I like to pin those so that I don't accidentally exit out of them. So if you right click on a tab, you can pin the tab to the top and it is now stuck and I cannot accidentally exit out of there. So just some little fun little tools that you can use as you're using Microsoft Edge, ways to save bookmarks and websites that you want to revisit later.
And I do kind of want to just mention that it is like it is a personal preference, which web browser you're going to use, right? We talked about Edge because Microsoft Edge, this is part of Microsoft Suite, this web browser. It's Microsoft's version of the internet's browser. You might have Chrome that you're using, which is Google's. You might have Firefox.
Safari is on your phone, any Apple phones that anybody has.
Absolutely. So these are just all different ways to like access the internet. What we're talking about here with Microsoft Edge, because we're kind of highlighting the Microsoft suite of products. I did just kind of want to mention, that this whole thing with creating these bookmarks, these folders, with pinning these tabs, this functionality is in other browsers as well. So you definitely like spend some time kind of clicking around. A lot of, if you are listening and you're not able to watch this episode, a lot of what Betsy's talking about here is up in that like address bar. It's up there on top where you're putting in your www dot. That's where you're going to find like those 3 dots for you to manage this tab, or for you to like set it as a favorite where that star icon is that we're talking about. So definitely like, within Edge and within whatever the browser is that you're comfortable using, like play around up there in that top, in that favorites bar that's right underneath that www dot, bar, the address bar. Because that's kind of a game changer. I'm not going to lie. Like I was a little sarcastic about it, but like having those websites that we visit very frequently, I know that X, Y, and Z like has to be open on my machine every single day that I'm going to come to work. So for me to be able to like not only save those, organize them into a folder, but then open multiples at once, it's an efficiency thing. Like it's extremely accessible. It makes it easy to get into those things that you're using a lot.
They've added a lot of functionality to web browsers
that
they never used to have, and they're constantly updating them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was something cool that we really just wanted to pass along to you, because it is it's a neat way to kind of like keep some of that stuff saved, keep it organized. And that was Edge.
All right. So we are going to move on to Microsoft Word.
We are. So the bird is the word, Microsoft Word. On my notes here, it says, "What is it?" ? So obviously, Microsoft Word is a word processor. It is the OG word processor. And basically, it's just an application for us to be able to type up, documents and to create written word.
Reports, letters, resumes, you name it. You can type it up in Microsoft Word.
Absolutely.
Make tables.
And this is another one where I guess I'm just going to kind of parrot what Betsy said earlier about what we're talking about today is an overview of this product. We really are going to give you kind of like a high level glimpse of Word instead of getting into like nitty gritty, because there's all kinds of functions in this app, you guys. Like Word does a lot for you. So that's another one where I would just spend time playing inside of Word and the settings. You can access it locally, and that means open the app from your machine itself. So I would go into my Windows icon or my start menu, and I scroll down to my W's, and I find Word, and I will open up the application Word. Word. I will open up a new document that way. And so this right here, you can see that that's my Microsoft login account up here in this upper right hand corner, because that's how I have logged into, right, Microsoft, like on this machine. But this document right here is a local document. I opened it from my computer, and I'm in the application that is hosted on my computer. So everything that I'm doing here inside of this document is living on my computer right now, right? You want to add anything to that, Betsy?
So the other way then to access it, if I minimize my application, would be by going to that office.com that we talked about earlier and accessing as an app on the web.
365.
Through 365. So over on the left-hand side where my apps are, if I go to Microsoft Word, you're going to notice that that's going to open up in my web browser, not as an application on my computer. So when I click on a blank document, it's going to look a little bit different. It has all the same functionality, but notice now that up in the address bar, I actually have a link to this document I'm working on. We didn't have that on the application in our computer. So now it's showing me that I am logged in. It looks a little different here than it did before. I have my link to my document that I'm working on. And now I can go ahead and start my document. And I have my apps up here as well.
I think that maybe an easy way to kind of like reference this, or to say like, am I in Word like on the internet, or am I in Word on my computer, is a really like a hot tip would just be to look at that address bar up at the top, or look at the top of your window when you are inside of a Word document. So right now we're looking at the one that is like, that was accessed through Microsoft 365. You can see that there's like a web address on the top of it, you know, and that's where this document kind of lives, in that cloud. If you click on the Word application that we clicked on, that we opened from the computer itself, there is no web browser. You don't see a web address at the top of that. You just see the application, right? Like basic Word stuff.
And you'll notice on the web that where it says save status, it's automatically saved. And when I go to my application, my autosave right now is off. So it's not going to actually save this document on my computer until I tell it to do so. If I turn this on, it will want to put it into my OneDrive, and it will save as I go. And if my autosave is off, all I have to do is click my little save button. It'll have me name the file,
choose
and then
where
save
you want to put it, right? Yeah. And this document here, so you can save it locally inside of your machine, or you can save it somewhere where you have synced up to some cloud network storage. So yeah, that's something really kind of to keep in mind, you guys, is how you're accessing the application for Word. It is going to affect kind of like how it's being saved, where it's being saved, how it's being saved. Way back when, in the olden times, we had no such thing as cloud storage. We had very little access to like network sharing and things like that. So if we didn't click that save icon, we lost all of that work, and it was a real nightmare situation. Because if you didn't remember to save frequently, you would lose that work. Well, I mean, I guess I just sort of, that is still a risk when you are not working in cloud storage or on network storage. If you are only working locally from your computer and locally within that application, that document's just living right there on that machine for you. Yeah.
So we now have the ability to share these documents, and you'll notice that these options are on both your application on your computer and on the web version. So these look very similar to one another.
And they're both in the upper right-hand corner of your screen.
So when I want to share this, I'm going to go up to share, and it's going to have me save it to my OneDrive. So that's the only way it's going to allow you to share is if it's in your OneDrive, and I can attach a copy. So I could do a copy of a Word document or a PDF, but that's not real-time sharing. Like you're just attaching that document.
It's a version of the document that they're going to have to pull down, download, open up. She's naming a document right now.
So once your document's named, it's in your OneDrive, you're good to go as far as sharing. And this is where we can type in the name of somebody, or we can type in their email and give them different permissions. So are you wanting them to edit this document, which gives them all of the editing rights, just like you would have as the owner? You can allow them to only view it or to review it, which means that they can suggest changes, but they can't actually change anything. And if you want to send a message with that, you can type in your message and let them know why you're sharing it or what this document is for. And we click on the send button, and it will actually generate an email to them to let them know it was shared.
And when they get that email, this shared document will be an attachment in that in that email, it will be an attachment. It'll be a file that's attached to it. That's how we've shared it from Word, from the application, from our local desktop. Now Betsy's going to show you how to share it if you've gone through 365.
Yep. And then just one more note about this is there is a link. You can copy and paste that link and share it with the link. So for those of you that are Google users that are used to those share options, Microsoft has now brought those in as well. So going to the web version, again, we can see the share button upper right-hand corner. I have the ability to copy the link, and I have that ability to share. So when I share this, notice it didn't have to put it into my OneDrive because it's already on the web. It's already there where I can share it. So I can add their emails or a group, add a message, and then go ahead and send that via the internet.
Yep. And the process of sharing, again, those share buttons that are up in there in the upper right-hand corner, the process is very similar between both of these documents, right? But the very cool feature about it that we really do want to highlight is that when you're sharing this way, you do get to set those permissions. You do get to decide the person who I'm sending this document to, here's how I want them to interact with this document.
Yes, so it's really important to ask yourself what that purpose of sharing it is. Yep. If you are not wanting them to make changes, make sure that it is a view-only document. And Word has a lot of different formatting features, the layouts, changing it from portrait to landscape, really whatever you're trying to do with it, you can do. They do have dictation. You can talk to your computer and it will type for you, which is amazing.
The coolest stuff, man, the coolest stuff. I'm a big nerd for Word. There's a lot of cool features in here, you guys. There really are.
Yep. Lots of stuff that you can do.
Okay. But too much to mention today, so we're going to move on from Microsoft Word now into Microsoft Excel.
Okay, so Microsoft Excel is a spreadsheet, very data-driven.
Data or data?
Data.
Data.
I always say data.
That's good. It's good we're on both sides of the table then here. All right.
Yes, so you'll hear it pronounced both ways today.
And both ways are acceptable. All right, so it's a spreadsheet to help house some data for us.
Yes, and it really just comes down to compiling data, organizing, manipulating, pulling in those charts and graphs and making it visual for anybody that's looking at your spreadsheet. So just like Word, we can go to our application on our devices. So when I click on that, I'm going to go ahead and open up a blank document. And just like before, we have our autosave feature that you can turn on and off. We have our save feature up in the top left corner. Moving across there, I'm logged in with my account because I'm logged into my device with my Microsoft account. So those are all linked together. And the second way is to go to your Office 365 on the web, choose Excel, and to open a blank workbook. So here's the thing. They call it a workbook, which means that you can have multiple sheets in your workbook, which is fun to do. So right now we have our workbook. Down at the bottom, you have your sheets. So when you have multiple topics in one workbook, you have the ability to create those different sheets, which means you don't have to open it Excel after Excel after Excel. It's all there for you.
It's so cool.
So.
Just nerd things, you guys. Just nerd things
Yes.
over here. I want to mention too, before we move on from like creating those tabs and the workbook versus the sheet, when you're going into print an Excel document, you are given a function with some radial buttons there to choose. Do you want to print this current sheet? Do you want to print selected sheets? Or would you like to print the entire workbook? So it's like the current selection. That's the one that like is showing up on my window right there.
The active sheet. So if you've got 5 sheets and you're on sheet 2, and that's the one you want to print, then you would choose the active sheet option. If you have 20 sheets, I would be careful of printing the entire workbook. But if that's what you need, that's what you can do.
Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the workbooks are really handy, you guys. And that's something that I don't know if it is sort of like really readily available information. Like, I don't know if most Excel users do know that this thing can function within this whole like workbook way.
So just like Microsoft Word, we do have those sharing abilities up in the upper right-hand corner under where you're logged in at. So we have copy links. You can link to sheets. So that's super nice that you can, you have one page of a workbook, maybe your first page, and you have multiple sheets. You can actually link those sheets to that front page and make it like a table of contents almost. So you can click through that. And then if I go to share, I have those same sharing permissions, editing and viewing, and I can send that out with a message if I'd like.
I will mention too that with the sharing permissions on Excel, it functions the same way. You're going to take the same steps that you did that we talked about in Word. You're going to share that the same way. But the permissions are just a little bit different only because within Excel, it's not as easy to like add a little note or to make comments on it like it is in Word. So yeah, Betsy was just kind of taking you through in the upper right-hand corner where that has that share button. And again, it's that procedure that you're going to take, whether you are working from this local application on your device, or if you are working through your Microsoft 365 cloud.
And the other thing is when you do share an Excel spreadsheet, you do have the ability to protect your sheets. So if you're wanting them to edit part of this spreadsheet, but some things need to stay the way they are, if you go down to where your sheet is and right click on it, it does say to protect this sheet. And you can tell it and customize what you want to protect in that sheet.
And when you do that, you can create a password for it, and that password is basically like your key to accessing, the different things that you've locked down on this Excel sheet. Yeah.
And if I right click again, we can insert, delete, we can rename these. So if you're wanting to give each sheet its own name, we have the ability to do that. We can move or copy. We can even change the color of the tabs if you are a color coding person. We can do that. We can hide them. And we can link to the sheet. So that's kind of what we talked about earlier, being able to link with inside of it. To add sheets, we have this little plus button. So if we click on that, it's going to give you the names. By double clicking inside here,
like on the tab itself.
I can go ahead and give it a name to specify what that tab is for, or what that sheet is for.
Yep.
You can add in graphs, charts.
Oh, there's so much.
That doesn't even like touch the
Oh, Betsy, there's so much.
There's formulas that you can use.
There's conditional formatting.
Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah. There's data manipulation. We can sort the data. We can classify it in different ways. There's so many things you could do in here, you guys, with the information that you're putting in. With the data, that you're using. There's a lot of different things within Excel.
You can actually take a picture of something and import data, and it puts it in.
It's very cool.
Amazing.
It's very cool.
We're not even doing it justice right now.
But yeah, so this is another one too, where I'm going to tell you guys that before I got any kind of training whatsoever, I was just in the application itself fishing around, and I taught myself a lot of things. So I really do encourage you guys to play in these apps. Play. like treat it like an explorational space and kind of like see what you can do to fish around. Because again, there's just so much in here functionality wise that you can do with your data that, you know, Betsy mentioned formulas and stuff like that. There's nothing smoother than, just like highlighting a bunch of cells and going equal sum, boom, or, something like that. So not even super fancy schmancy formulas, but like some basic Betty stuff, But
So if I were to
take,
we have our cells here. So each individual rectangle here that you see is called a cell. And a spreadsheet works using rows and columns. The rows are the numbers that are on the left-hand side. So if I highlight a row, it's going to go from left to right.
Rows are horizontally.
And then my columns are actually alphabetical. So if I select column A, you're going to notice it goes up and down or vertical.
And the columns are vertical. Yep. Also, if you click in between, so your rows have numbers, your columns have letters, there is a tiny little cell that is between A and 1. And if you click in that cell, not the cell, I'm sorry, but like on the edges of it, if you click in between A and 1, you can highlight that entire sheet that you're on right there. So anything that you wanted to change about that entire sheet that you're working in, you could do that easily that way.
So when you click on a cell itself, it's named by the column and the row. So I am currently in cell A1 is how they would call that. And that's how it talks. It talks in cell language.
Mm-hmm. It's like coordinates. If you think about like the map coordinates with longitude and latitude, it functions a little bit like that. Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, we could go on about the functionality for sure, because like there is a myriad of things that you can do, even within like isolating specific cells, and manipulating them that way. Like
hiding columns, hiding rows. If you click and drag, you're actually selecting a range of cells. Mm-hmm. And that range would be from, in this particular case, A1 through E15 is how the spreadsheet actually reads that range of cells. So I put some numbers in A1 through A4, and if I click and drag those numbers and find my auto sum feature in the upper right-hand corner and click auto sum, it will literally give me the sum of those numbers that I chose.
Highlight them again real quick, and I want to show you too. So all she did was click in a cell and held it and dragged down, and now she's got within column A, what is that, 5 cells, 5 rows worth of cells there in column A are highlighted. Right down here in the lower left-hand corner, it gives you a count, it gives you a sum, it gives you an average. Like even just within an Excel document, you guys click and drag and look around, because the application itself, even without kind of like giving it a command, does some really cool stuff to help you organize this data like a little bit. So that's one of my favorites too, is basically just to click in a cell and then drag down to highlight a selection. And I can, just looking at the window, how many do I have? There's my count. There's my, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Very good.
So that is just basically, again, like we've said a number of times, it is just an overview, a highlight of Microsoft Excel and what that can do for you. Anything else to add there?
I don't think so. I still think that kind of wraps up our episode for today. It gives you a little bit more insight into what those apps are for, how you can access them, and how you can share them. So to wrap up today's podcast, we have Microsoft 365, which is a bunch of useful tools that can be used in just about any aspect of education. We have our teams that's used to build resources for a particular team, whether it be a math department or early childhood education or any departmentalized type.
Any theme. Yeah. Team is a theme. And a theme is a dream. And we also talked a little bit about Microsoft Explorer. That is our windows, right? Or our file icon. And that helps us get to what is where on our computer. And then we looked at Microsoft Edge, which is our internet browser, how we are going to access the great World Wide Web, and talked about some really cool features to utilize on Edge. We did a quick overview of Word, which is an awesome word processor. It's not your grandma's word processor. And then we talked about the OG data collector, which is Excel. Has a ton more tools than you might think and goes a long way towards streamlining your work.
Mm-hmm. Helping you work smarter, not harder.
For sure.
So that is it for today. But join us next time to learn about all things Google.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of MC Tech Talk with Betsy and Kit. If you would like to ask any questions about anything from today's episode, click the link in the description to fill out the Google form.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check back next month for our next episode of MC Tech Talk. You can find our flyer for future episodes linked in the show notes below.
Thanks again. We'll see you next time.